Welcome everybody back to the EDH Roundtable Deck Tech. Today we have Karn Silver Golem. This deck is a completely colorless deck. Everything around this deck is basically artifacts and lands. It's artifact centric, obviously. With Karn, you normally run a full combo package in here, which I've included. It's run for multiplayer. Deck hasn't been run much in my group, just because it's hard to get it out with so much aggro in my group, but it's fun to play when you have more lenient players around. And here we go, back into the deck tech. Here we have Karn Silver Golem. He's a 5 mana 4/4, and he has the ability that when he blocks or becomes blocked, he gets a -4/+4 until end of turn. But of course we don't care about that. What we care about is his second ability, where you pay 1 colorless and target non-creature artifact becomes an artifact creature with power and toughness, each equal to its converted mana cost until end of turn. And this deck abuses that a lot. So here we go. First we have mana fixing. We have Expedition Map. This is basically just to tutor for any land in the deck, since everything is a non-basic land. Next we have Basalt Monolith. It's 3 mana to tap for 3 colorless, and then you can spend 3 to untap it. This is part of the infinite mana combos in the deck. I'll go over those after. Here you have Thran Dynamo. It's 4 mana for tap for 3. Soul Ring, 1 mana to tap for 2. Gilded Lotus, 5 mana, taps for 3 colorless, obviously, since you can't create color in this deck. And here we have Overflowing Chalice. It's 0 mana, but it has a multi-kicker of 2. Every time you put 2 more mana into it, you put 1 counter on it, and then it can tap for 1 colorless mana for every counter on it. You can use this in a combo in the deck later on that I will explain. Next we have Mana Crypt. It's 0 mana cost, but during your upkeep you have to flip a coin, and an opponent calls heads or tails while the coin is in the air. If the flip ends up in your favor, you take no damage. If it ends up in their favor, you take 3 damage, and it taps for 2 colorless mana. Now you have Grim Monolith. It's 2 mana to tap for 3 colorless mana, and you have to pay 4 mana to untap Grim Monolith. One of the big mana sources in this deck is Blinkmoth Urn. It's 5 mana, and it states that at the beginning of each player's pre-combat main phase, so your first main phase, if Blinkmoth is untapped, that player adds 1 colorless to his or her mana pool for each artifact he or she controls. This does apply to your opponents too, but more or less it's going to give them maybe 1 or 2 colorless mana, but for you it's going to give you a ton of mana. And here you have Mana Vault. It's another one of those pay 1, tap to add 3 mana, and then you have to pay 4 to untap it. I forgot to mention that if it doesn't, on your upkeep, it does 1 damage to you. Here you have Dreamstone Hedron. It's 6 mana. It's basically 3 Mind Stones together, so you tap for 3. Or you can pay 3 to sacrifice it and draw 3 cards. Some more card draw we have is a Skull Clamp. It's 1 mana and equip for 1. It gives a creature +1/+0, and when that creature dies, you can draw 2 cards. Another equipment we have, especially for Conda, is Swiftfoot Boots. It's 2 mana and 1 to equip, and it gives you a creature hexproof and haste. Nim Deathmantle. This is part of an infinite combo I will get into later in the deck, but it involves Ashnod's Altar and Wormcoil Engine. But what it is, it's 2 mana equipment that says creature gets +2/+2 Intimidate, which means it can't be blocked by anything that is not its color, and it becomes a black zombie. And whenever a non-token creature is put into graveyard from the battlefield, I can pay 4. If I do, I can return that creature with Deathmantle attached to it. Here you have some more card draw. It's 5 mana Mind's Eye. When an opponent draws a card, you can pay 1, and if you do, draw a card. some mana acceleration, what allows you to sacrifice artifacts to gain mana. It's Clan Ironworks. It's 4 mana. I think I have this in this deck instead of Ashnod's Altar. I can't remember. But it allows you to sacrifice an artifact to add 2 mana to your mana pool. Here we have Mirrorworks. It's 5 mana. Whenever another non-token artifact enters the battlefield under your control, you may pay 2. If you do, I can make a token of that artifact. Mirror Turbine. This is another combo piece in this deck. It's 5 mana. You can tap to put 1 colorless 1/1 mirror onto the battlefield, or I can tap and pay. Sorry, don't tap and pay, but you tap and then tap 5 untapped or a mirror I control to search my deck for a mirror creature that I have in the deck. I think there's only mirror Battlesphere in here, and other than that, you know he's going to use the first ability. Here you have Semblance Anvil. It's 3 mana. When it comes into play, you imprint a card from your hand. What it allows you to do is it allows you to reduce the mana cost, which is going to be for everything in this deck, on artifact that you play. You're always going to be imprinting an artifact on here. Cloud Key, like Semblance Anvil, this is going to allow you to reduce the mana cost of stuff by 1 that you choose when it comes into play. It's 3 mana, and you're always normally going to choose artifacts when it comes into play. Spine of Ishsa. It's basically a Vindicate for 7 mana, but using colorless mana. And since you have a lot of artifacts, sacrifice, and recursion in this deck, you can use this a lot over and over. Oblivion Stone. It's 3 mana, and then you can pay 4 and tap and put a fate counter on target permanents. And then you can pay 5 to tap and then sacrifice Oblivion Stone to store each non-land permanent that has a non-fading counter on it. This is just a more expensive Navindrel's Disc, but allows you to save stuff. Here you have Navindrel's Disc. It's 4 mana, comes into play tapped, and when it untaps, you can pay 1 mana to then tap it and destroy all artifacts and creatures and enchantments. This is a combo I can use in this deck with Karn and with Mycosynth's Lattice. I'll get into that later. Here we have Temporal Aperture. It's 2 mana, and then it has the ability of 5 mana, and I can tap, and then shuffle my library and reel a top card, and until end of turn, as long as the card remains on top of the library, you may play the card as though it were in my hand without paying its mana cost. It's a really nice card, so say if you have some expensive artifacts in here that you want to get out that are more expensive than 5 mana, you can basically play them for only 5, or you're overpaying for some of the smaller ones. But it's a Sentinel Flute basically, but not as good. And here we have Sentinel Flute, obviously. It's 5 mana, and then I can pay X and search my library for a creature card with a total casting cost no greater than X, and reveal it, and then put it into my hand. This is just for getting out those combo pieces that you'll need later on. Here you have Arena of the Ancients. This card is to basically help you when you have generals that are continuously attacking you. It's 3 mana, and when Arena of the Ancients comes into play, tap all legends, and legends do not untap during their controller's untap phase. You can blink this sometimes back to your hand or back to your graveyard and then recur it. But a lot of the times this is like a overpriced, not overpriced I would say, but a really good ghostly prison for generals basically. Here we have a major key piece in this deck. We have Mycosynth's Lattice. It's 6 mana, and all permanents are artifacts in addition to other types. All cards that aren't in play, spells, and permanents are colorless, and players may spend mana as though it were mana of any color. This is a major combo piece, and I'll get into that later. Relic of Progenitus. In here, obviously, to stop those decks that are Reanimator decks. Witchbane Orb, one of the newer cards. It's 4 mana, and when it comes into play, I can destroy all curses on me, which normally doesn't happen in EDH too often, but it also allows me to have hexproof. Soul Conduit for late games where I'm losing and someone's winning life-wise, so I'll just pay 6 mana to play it, 6 mana to tap it, and I exchange my life total with a target opponent, or I can make 2 opponents switch their life totals. You have Sculpting Steel to obviously copy any of the artifacts I have on the field, or just for a general kill. Defense Grid. I use this in here because it allows me to keep anyone from reacting to any of my my combos that I'm having to go off with, like a Stifle or something. It's 2 mana, and then it says during each player's turn, spells played by another player cost an additional 3. And because this deck only has 1 non-artifact spell, everything is ability based, so I never have to worry about having to spend anything on an opponent's turn unless it's an ability. Voltaic Key, 1 mana, and pay 1 mana to untap target artifact. Runes of the Brighthearth. This is perhaps the key combo piece in this whole deck. You use its ability to double an activated ability that you have on the field that's not a mana ability. So you'll use this with, say, your basalt or your grim monolith, your voltaic key, and a whole bunch of other things that allow you to untap and continuously give you infinite mana all over and over. But we'll get into more what rings can do later on. Next we have Torpor Orb. It's 2 mana, and it says creatures enter the battlefield don't cause abilities to trigger. So a lot of those Stomp Howlers or anything that has enter the battlefield that destroy artifacts or destroy your lands will negate that. Grafdigger's Cage. This is kind of iffy in my deck, but I haven't tested it quite out much because it stops reanimator decks against you, but it also can hinder you if you're running certain combos because you need to use the graveyard to bring back some creature artifacts. So I'm still testing this right now. And just in case, it says Grafdigger's Cage is 1 mana, and creatures can't enter the battlefield from graveyards or libraries, and players can't cast cards in graveyards or libraries. Here we have Darksteel Forge. It's 9 mana. Artifacts I control are indestructible. You can use this in turn with Individual's Disc to destroy everything but your stuff, basically. Crystal Ball. 3 mana. You can pay 1, and the tap and the scry 2. Just allows you for mana fix, or not mana fix, but card fixing on the top of your deck. Here we have Unwinding Clock. It's 4 mana, and untap all artifacts I control and each other player's untap set. You have Clock of Omens. This is, can be used as a combo piece to untap and tap artifacts to do infinite stuff. It's 4 mana, tap 2 untapped artifacts I control to untap target artifact. Here you have Mimic Vat. Mimic Vat is 3 mana. I can imprint something when a non-token creature goes to the graveyard and put it on Mimic Vat. And I can pay 3 to tap and then put a token onto the battlefield that's a copy of the exiled card. It gains haste, and then I exile it at the beginning of the next end step. And everyone knows about the whole end step trick that they changed when they changed the exile at the end of end step. So if you activate this after the discard step, you keep the token until the next turn, so you can create another token during your turn. So you can have 2 tokens on the field technically, while there supposedly should only be 1. We have Sensei's Divining Top for more deck fixing, just to make sure we get those pieces that we need. Tower of Fortunes. It's 4 mana and pay 8 to tap and then draw 4 cards. Just allowing me to get, when I have infinite mana or when I just have excess mana that I can't use, allows me to just draw more cards. Serum Tank, it's 3 mana, and whenever a Serum Tank or another artifact comes into play, put a charge counter on Serum Tank. Then I can pay 3 and tap to remove a charge counter on Tank, and then draw a card. Because everything in the deck is artifact, I'm always going to be putting counters on here. Here you have Howling Mine. It's 2 mana, and at the beginning of each player's draw step, if Howling Mine is untapped, that player draws a card. Just excess drawing for me and all my opponents, but helps me sometimes more than you. You have Erratic Portal. It's 4 mana, 1 mana to tap, and then return target creature to owner's hand unless its controller pays 1. It's really great for when an opponent's tapped out and they have their general on the field and they decide to attack you, so you just bounce their general to their hand. Next we have a Chroma's Memorial for when we create tons and tons of token creatures using our Wormcoil Engine combo. It gives them Flying, Haste, Pro Red, Pro Black, and Vigilance for 7 mana. Here you have one of our recursion creatures, Mirror Retriever. It's 2 mana, it's a 1/1. And when Mirror Retriever is put into a graveyard from play, return another artifact card from my graveyard to my hand. I don't have Junk Diver in here, I think. I'm not sure. Let me see. No, I don't have Junk Diver in here. But you can use Junk Diver if you don't have a Mirror Retriever. They do the same thing, just Junk Diver costs 1 more. We have Lodestone Golem. It's 4 mana, it's a 5/3, and non-artifact spells cost 1 more to cast. The only non-artifact spell in this deck is my 1 sorcery, and you all probably know what that is. Arcbounder Kramer. It's 4 mana, and it's 0/0, but it has modular 2, so it comes out as a 2/2. But its ability is remove a +1/+1 counter from Arcbounder Reclaimer, put target artifact card from your graveyard on top of your library. I don't run the chamber in here to give it more artifact counters, but it's basically 4 mana to recur 2 artifacts. I can do combos with it, but I really never needed to. Here you have Mirror Battlesphere. You can pay 7 for it, and then it's a 4/7. And when it comes onto the field, I get 4 1/1 colorless mirror tokens into play. And when the Battlesphere attacks, I can tap X untapped mirror I control. So say you have a ton of mirror tokens from the mirror earlier. They do X damage to a defending player, and the Battlesphere gets +X/+0. Next we have Kodatha Forgemaster. It's 5 mana, it's a 3/5. And I can tap and sacrifice 3 artifacts, search my library for an artifact card, and put it onto the battlefield. And then I can shuffle my library. This is a really, really amazing combo piece, especially when you have tons and tons of tokens on the field from either the Wormcoil or from making tons of mirrors. But I'll go into that later. Next we have Duplicant, 6 mana, it's a 2/4, and the imprint, when it comes into play, I can remove target non-token creature from the game. As long as a creature card is imprinted on Duplicant, Duplicant is the card's power, toughness, and creature type, but it's still a shapeshifter. It's a great card for removing generals, it's a great card for removing titans. It's just a great card overall for absolute removal. Shimmermere, it's 3 colorless, and has flash, and gives all my artifacts flash from my hand, and it's a 2/2. Here you have Copper Gnome, a good old favorite. It's 2 colorless, and it's a 1/1, and I can pay 4 mana and then sacrifice it, and I can choose an artifact card in my hand and put it onto the battlefield. Here, Scarecrow, another bit of a combo piece. It's 3 mana, it's in a 1/2, and I can pay 1 to sacrifice Scarecrow to draw a card, or I can pay 4 and tap to return target artifact creature card from my graveyard to play. And here you have Arcbound Ravager. It's 2 colorless, and it's a 0/0, but it has modular 1, and it has sacrifice an artifact to put a +1/+1 counter on Arcbound Ravager. And everybody knows Mirrodin was combo-centric with Arcbound Ravager, so you all should know the combos by now, but I'll go into them later. Here you have Mycosynth Golem. It's 11 mana, has affinity for artifacts, and has the ability to give my artifact creature spells affinity. Not all my artifacts get affinity, just the creature spells, and it's a 4/5. He could come out of the deck if I really needed to. He's not that important because I run not that many creature spells in here for other artifacts. So if you find another artifact that you want to put in here, another creature you want to put in here in later sets, he can come out. Next we have I guess the second best combo piece in this whole deck that requires you to untap and tap lots of stuff is Voltaic Construct. He's 4, he's a 2/2, and he has 2 colorless to untap target artifact creature. And we'll go more into his combo interactions later on. Here's one of my favorite combo cards in here. I mean, he's just a creature, but he becomes part of a combo. It's a Wormcoil Engine. He's 6 mana. For a 6/6, he has Death Touch and Lifelink. And when he is put into a graveyard, I get a 3/3 colorless worm token that has Death Touch and a 3/3 colorless worm token that has Lifelink. And the one spell I actually have in this whole deck is All is Dust. Since everybody I'm playing against normally is running colored stuff, I will play it, and they have to sacrifice all their colored permanents. Then we have the one Planeswalker that's allowed in this deck, Karn Liberated. I haven't tested out Karn too much because I've only recently got him. He's 7 mana, and he has the ability for 4 up to target player exiles a card from his or her hand, or I can -3 to exile target permanent, and then if I have 14 loyalty counters on him, I can basically Shahrazad the whole game, but with your permanents onto my field. Here we get into the lands. These are the lands that don't do anything but provide a utility and not mana. Because you're not going to be really attacking in this whole game at all, and you need to save yourself from future attacks, Glacial Chasm is going to be a great card for you. It has a cumulative upkeep of 2 life, but you can gain life back later in this deck. But when it comes into play, you sacrifice the land, and you cannot attack, but all damage done to you is reduced to 0. So this saves you for a long time from getting attacked and getting killed by your opponents, until someone obviously gets out like a wasteland on you, but that's not too often in an EDH game and very early on. Here's one of the proxies that I have in this deck because I can't afford it. It's the Tabernacle at Pendrell's Vale. This card is extremely expensive, so I really couldn't get it in here, but it has the ability that all creatures on their upkeep have an upkeep of 1 colorless. So if they don't pay the upkeep, they have to be sacrificed. I use this in the deck as a don't attack me, and I won't play the Pendrell's Vale because I have a lot of token players in my group. So this is a play it if you need protection, or play it as a political card. Then we have Maze of Ith for our beasties that come at us and we don't want them attacking. Here we go into our Mishra's and Urza's stuff. We have Mishra's Factory. It taps for colors, obviously, and then it can pay 1 to make it into a 2/2 artifact creature, and then you can tap it to give an assembly worker a +1/+1. So if you use like Vesuva to make another Mishra's Factory, you can make your Mishra's Factory into a 1/1, and then tap your Vesuva to make that into a 2/2. Sorry, make it into a 3/3. Here we have the Urzatron. We have Urza's Power Plant, Urza's Mine, and Urza's Tower. Then we have the not so good Urza's Land, but it still works, the Urza's Factory. And you can allow the ability to pay 7 and tap and put a 2/2 assembly worker artifact onto the field. We have some land destruction. We have Dust Bowl. You can pay 3 and tap and sacrifice a land to destroy target non-basic land. We have Tech Edge, another destruction land. Strip Mine. Now we get into the utility lands. We have Blink Moth Well. It's tap 1, or you can pay 2 and tap to tap target non-creature artifact. We have Blinkmoth Nexus. Its ability is you can pay 1, and Blinkmoth Nexus becomes a 1/1 artifact creature with flying until end of turn. Or you can pay 1 and then tap, and then target Blinkmoth gets a +1/+1 until end of turn. So, I mean, if you were playing this in a normal 60 card, you could run 4 and you could boost them up. Or you could do the whole thing like Mishra's Workshop, or not Mishra's Factory, and Vesuva it, so you can make the creature boost in that way. We have Inkmoth Nexus, the latest version of the Inkmoth stuff. It makes a 1/1 artifact flying creature that has Infect. We have Springjack Pasture. For mid games, when you have just excess mana, you'd pay 4 mana to make a goat blocker, and then you can tap it and then sacrifice X goats to add X many mana that you have, and then you gain that much life. Here you have another artifact land creature. Well, I wouldn't say it could be an artifact too, but Moonvault makes a 2/2 creature, but it's also a shapeshifter, so it can be any type. We have another manland, our Dread Sanctuary. You pay 4, it becomes a 4/2 artifact creature till end of turn. Now we have some non-artifact utility lands. We have Phyrexia's Core. It's 1, and then you tap and sacrifice an artifact and gain 1 life. And we got Mirroring the Moaning Well. It's allows the ability to pay 3 mana, tap, and sacrifice a creature, and you gain life equal to the sacrificed creature's toughness. If I had Diamond Valley, I'd put it in here too, but it's just another one of those expensive lands I can't afford. As you have High Market, another sack a creature, gain 1 life card. Temple of False God gives me 2 mana when I have 5 or more lands. Mikokoto, you could pay 2 and tap, everybody draws a card. Crystal Vein, taps for 1 colorless, or you can tap and sacrifice to give you 2 colorless. Reliquary Tower allows you to have infinite hand size. Mystifying Maze, you pay 4 and you can exile target attacking creature an opponent controls, and at the beginning of the next end step return it to their field. Blast Landscape, it's a colorless land that allows you to cycle. We have Buried Ruin. It's 2, and then tap and sacrifice Buried Ruin to return an artifact from your graveyard to your hand. Zoetic Cavern. It's a morph land. You can either play it as a land, or you can pay 2 and play it as a 2/2 creature. Deserted Temple, allowing you to untap and tap your Mishra's Workshop. And the only last proxy in this deck is Mishra's Workshop, because another $350 land that I can't afford, but it's a key part of this deck. My group allows it, except for when I get like a turn 2 Wormcoil Engine, but it allows you to tap for 3 colorless mana, but you can only spend that mana on artifacts. You have Homeward Path. It's just taps for 1 mana, but also each player gains control of all creatures he or she owns. So if one of your opponents insurrections you or threatens you, you can just get all your creatures back right then. Tower of the Magistrate. Also taps for 1 colorless, but also taps for 1, and target creature gains protection from artifacts until end of turn. So if your opponent is going Voltron and putting all these equipments on their creature, none of them have protection from lands, so you can tap, give them protection from artifacts, and all their equipment falls off. We have Vesuva. It's a proxy right now, but I have it in my binder. I just haven't put it in the deck, so you can just forget about that. But it comes into play tapped, and it allows you to copy target land on the field. It's good for destroying Gaia's Cradles, or making a wasteland for itself, or just copying any of the lands that you need. Next we have a Scorched Ruin. It comes into play, I have to sacrifice 2 untapped lands I control, but it taps for 4 colorless mana. We have Eldrazi Temple. I don't run Eldrazi in the deck, but it taps for 1 colored mana, but I can tap it for 2 to spend this mana to cast Eldrazi spells. It's only going to be casting 2 for All is Dust, but that it's still fine. It's colorless mana. Next we have Eye of Ugin. Allows my Eldrazi spells to cost 2 less to cast if I have both on the field, which is awesome. But then I can also pay 7 mana to search my library for a colorless creature card, reveal it, and put it into my hand, then shuffle my library. Only reason I have it in here is because it's a tutor for my colorless creatures. It could come out if another good colorless land comes out in the future, but we shall see. And our last land we have is Petrified Field. It taps for colorless, or I can tap to sacrifice it to return target land from my graveyard to my hand. Alright, that was my list of Karn. So Karn is a big colorless deck, but allows you to do lots and lots of artifact recursion, artifact pumping. But I'll just go quickly over all the combos that you can do in this deck. I'm not going to bring out all the cards because it'll take me too much time. But with the Rings of Brighthearth, you can use your Basalt and Grim monolith to make infinite mana. You can use the Rings and a Voltaic Key and a Chalice with 4+ counters on it to make infinite mana. And then you have with Karn and the Voltaic Construct and a Gilded Lotus, you can make infinite mana. With Karn and Voltaic again, with both of the monoliths, you can make infinite mana. Same thing with Thran and the Mana Vault. Then you have Thran and the Mycosynth Lattice, and you can nuke all your opponent's lands, because everything in play is an artifact, and Karn turns everything into a creature that is already an artifact. So automatically your opponent's lands are creatures or artifacts, and it turns them into 0/0, and they just die. And then next we have Mycosynth Lattice plus Darksteel that I explained, or Darksteel Forge that I explained earlier, plus Navindrel's Disc, and destroy all opponent's stuff. And people were probably wondering about the Worm Coil Engine. I can do the Worm Coil Engine with the Nim Death Mantle and the Crackclay and Ironworks. So what I'll do is I'll play the Worm Coil Engine when I have the Death Mantle out. I'll sacrifice the Worm Coil Engine. I get 2 mana, sacrifice one of the tokens at the same time. It gives me 4 mana floating to pay for the Nim Death Mantle to re-bring the Worm Coil back out, and I'm left with 1 token. I keep doing that over and over again, and you can make as many tokens as you want. So I'll give you infinite color tokens. And Koldatha, Forge Master, it's really too long to get into. I'll probably put the explanation of the infinite combo on the comments for this. So if you want to hear more about this in comments, just let me know. Questions or anything you need to help understand this deck, just let me know. Thank you for sitting through this longer than normal explanation, and hope to see you guys again. Thank you very much.